Hello, and thank you for joining us on the NACAC virtual session, How to Help Students Develop a Financial Plan for College. My name is Drew Griffin. I'm the Assistant Vice Provost for Admissions and Financial Aid at the University of Central Missouri. And with me today is Wendy Lindsay.
Yes, hello. I'm Wendy Lindsay. I'm Director of the Regional Student Program at the New England Board of Higher Education. Welcome.
Perfect. Wendy and I are going to chat with you about developing financial plans for students, and we'll discuss a little bit about how COVID has impacted your students for this upcoming year. The major changes for your students, first off, test optional. That has been the hottest topic, I would say, this year. And you'll see in the graph in the top right from the Chronicle of Higher Education, just the recent explosion of schools that have gone test optional. More colleges chose to go test optional this year than did so during the preceding 15 years combined. And so many schools are recognizing the need for access for students and the concern that students have had with the testing or lack thereof this year. So definitely test optional has been a major change for your students. It's important that you encourage your students to find out what that truly means for schools that they're seeking and they're applying to. NACAC just released a statement on what test optional means. We appreciate that, and the schools that have signed on to that. But it's important for your students to, again, really investigate and find out what that means for those specific schools that they're applying to. What that means really for schools is that they're going to be doing more of a holistic review. So they're going to be looking at personal essays, letters of support, possibly interviews in some cases. And so it's very important that students understand this during the application process and what that really means. Also, for scholarship eligibility, what does that mean if you're not submitting an ACT or SAT test score? Are you truly considered for scholarships? Is there a limitation there on some scholarships that you may qualify for? So it's important that students truly understand the whole test optional nature that schools are in today. Another major change for students is that they are more sensitive to pricing, and that's been an issue for some students, especially first generation college students, but overall students and families who've been impacted negatively by COVID definitely will take note of price sensitivity this year. The FAFSA and the FAFSA forecaster has always been great, but beginning September 27th this year, the FAFSA forecaster is going away. And so the Department of Education encourages students to visit studentaid.gov/resources for more information, for more aids and resources. So definitely encourage your students and families to reach out or to look at studentaid.gov/resources in lieu of the FAFSA forecaster. Also, a good tip would be for students to look at each school's individual net price calculator or comparing school costs with tools like the college scorecard. Or you'll see there on the bottom right, fairtest.org, collegecosts.ed.gov, or collegescorecard.ed.gov are great resources for students to look at, again, the test optional realm, or look at net price calculations and comparing schools that they're looking at. In terms of net price and financial aid, it's important to explain to your students the differences between the cost of attendance, the COA, and the average net price. Those two are different. The cost of attendance is the sticker price, and students, I think a lot of times, are shocked and turned off from a school by the sticker price, and it's important to encourage them not to take that on face value, but to think about what the average net price will be after financial aid is applied. The average net price is the average amount charged after all scholarships and grants are accepted, and that's not including loans or work study. So really explain to your students the differences there and why that's important, so that they get an accurate picture of what their financial aid will look like, what their out-of-pocket costs will look like as well. Encourage your students to look at the buying power of scholarships. They may get excited about a large scholarship amount, but just because the scholarship amount is more doesn't mean that it actually pays for more. For example, school A scholarship may be $10,000, but school A also costs $35,000. School B may have a scholarship of $4,000, but it costs maybe $10,000, $15,000. So they're actually getting more for that scholarship B at school B with that scholarship than school A, even though that amount is higher. Hope that makes sense. But it's important for your students and parents to really weigh those financial aid awards and review those intently. And again, that last bullet, encourage students and families to review all aid packages and the billing statements. Again, for first generation college students, it may be confusing for them in terms of what the aid package means or what the billing statement means. So definitely having them review that with you as the school counselor, or if there's questions, when in doubt, have them contact the specific school's financial aid office. They're always happy to help and explain what that aid package looks like, as well as what that billing statement means, what do these charges mean. That way students and families are starting off strong in terms of financial wellness. A couple of different websites there for helpful scholarship searches. Fastweb.com, College Board has a great scholarship search, Niche, CapEx, and of course, NACAC's Knowledge Center. I encourage you to check that out. There's a lot of great resources for scholarships and financial aid in general. So definitely check that out. The last thing I'll talk about that's big, I think this year, that's impacted students and families negatively is again, just how COVID has wrecked jobs and employment and the like. So special circumstances are going to be pretty important this year for your students. And every school has a form that's called Recalculation of Federal Financial Aid Eligibility, also known as Special Circumstances or Professional Judgment. And I encourage you to encourage your students to complete that. If there's been any interruption in employment or if COVID-19 has impacted them negatively, students and families can list loss of employment or benefits, death of a parent or other family member, separation or divorce, retirement, maybe higher than normal out-of-pocket medical, childcare, or transportation costs. Especially again, dealing with COVID, it's important for them to outline those on the form. If there's any questions on that, I encourage them to fill it out anyway. The financial aid offices can approve or deny. There will be supporting documents that are required. Anytime a student does a special circumstances form, there will be special or supporting documents that are required. And this allows the school to recalculate aid eligibility under more recent circumstances than the prior years. So that's important as well. If something has changed drastically in the income for the students and parents, definitely a special circumstances form is the way to go. Some additional notes there, schools may have specific forms for that, again, because of the CARES Act and funding for that. They may be tracking COVID-19 circumstances differently, so alert your students and families to that. Also, every year, I'm sure you see students and families that fill out the wrong FAFSA, or they may fill out the wrong forms there. So make sure that you're alerting your students to complete the correct FAFSA year for 21-22, as well as any of the special circumstances forms they may need. And again, if unsure, have them talk with their financial aid offices at the schools that they're applying to. They'll have a more specific examples for the students versus just a blanket, a blanket covering there. So I think it's pretty important. And at that, I'm going to turn it over to Wendy.
Thank you, Drew. Now we're going to take a look at some programs that can lower costs for students that are outside of the traditional financial aid application process. These are regional tuition programs, and they help students when they attend out-of-state colleges. The programs are administered by 4 compact organizations, and they're based on formal agreements among the participating states in the 4 regions. Going from west to east, there's the Western Interstate Commission on Higher Education, the Midwestern Higher Education Compact, the Southern Regional Education Board, and the New England Board of Higher Education. So most of the states in the country participate in a compact. So the regional tuition programs are not traditional scholarships. They're a way of providing upfront tuition discounting for students. So instead of the out-of-state tuition, students are charged a much lower tuition rate, in some cases as low as in-state. Undergraduate and graduate programs are offered, and the program offerings themselves and the tuition savings vary by institution. So to find out how your students can be eligible, first of all, they need to be living in a state that's in a participating compact program. And they would attend a college out of state within the region. So their eligibility depends on what state they're living in and perhaps what they're going to study, and then some institutions may have additional criteria. In some cases, eligibility is for specialized programs that are not offered in a student's home state by the public colleges. And in some cases, it's for any program that the college wishes to make available at a reduced tuition rate. And there are some very unique programs that are offered through some of these regional tuition programs, like cybersecurity and data science, for example. Programs that really help students enter high demand careers. These programs have expanded over time. Some of them have been around for more than 50 years, so they have a long track record of helping students afford and access programs. For example, the tuition break this past year had a record number of students in undergraduate four-year programs. The number of programs also has increased over time in all the compacts. And through tuition break, there were over 2,000 programs that were made available. So for your students to find out more if it's going to be a good fit for them, whether it's going to provide the program they wish to study and the kind of institution they're looking for, each program has a website with very comprehensive information available. Students can enter what state they live in and then look up the program they're interested in and find out which colleges offer the program and what the tuition rate would be that they would pay and what they would save. A couple other things to note: that in addition to the regional tuition programs, individual institutions also are doing some special discounting for out-of-state students, where they waive the tuition rate, the out-of-state rate entirely, and charge students in-state, or they reduce it. And sometimes it's for students in neighboring states or even distant states. But that's something for your students to look into when they're checking out out-of-state public colleges. In addition, in a few states, they're actually waiving the in-state tuition for qualified students. Sometimes it's Pell Grant recipients or low-income students that are eligible for that. But that's an important resource as well. And then finally, another option would be for students to start at community college as a way of saving money and then transfer to a four-year institution. So there are a number of resources available online. Drew has already mentioned several of them in terms of scholarship searches and how to calculate the net price at individual institutions. In addition, there are some resources on general information about financial aid, including finaid.org, for example, and Common App has some good information. So we encourage you to share these resources with your students. Thank you all for joining us for this session. We're happy to answer your questions, and you can also feel free to reach out to us directly through our email addresses or phone numbers. So thank you again for joining our session.
Thank you.